Where to even begin with explaining how I got to this point? I guess I need to start with the beginning. Growing up, I was always a creative child. I was obsessed with making things. It started with drawing from a very young age. I loved drawing and coloring with anything I could find around the house. Sometimes I'd make drawings of myself or others. Sometimes I'd draw characters I saw on television. But most of the time, I'd draw random characters that popped in my head. Sometimes these characters would be in fictional worlds or imaginary places as well. Sometimes I'd take chalk and create an entire world on the black top of our driveway. I'd create this world and live in it until rain would come through and wash it away. And it never deterred me though. I would just create another one from scratch again until the chalk I had ultimately turned into nubs and then turned into dust. The drawing never ended up going away until high school, but in the meantime, I went from drawing a lot to creating tangible things with my hands. I'd spend many days digging through the recyclable bin just to grab some thrown out cereal boxes, and I'd create endless things with them. Cardboard, tape, and scissors were at my disposal, and I'd turn these boxes into countless pinball machines, bowling alleys, and even just secret compartments. I was completely fascinated by the idea of having a box that looked completely ordinary on the outside, but the more you went through it, the more compartments you found. I made these kinds of things a lot, and my parents loved it, until they needed a box for something. When I got a little older, I started researching things online, which just added to this urge of mine to create. I was pretty obsessed with tech decks as a kid. I remember collecting them and finding it so cool to play with. But my fascination was no longer just creating things. It was also how other things were created. I remember becoming fascinated with the fact that skateboards were created with multiple plies of wood, sandwiched together with a strong wood glue and then put into a presser that shapes the board with its nose and tail. Instantly fascinated, I started looking up online to see if someone has implemented these techniques into fingerboards. I remember seeing that someone said they could use index cards as plies and simple glue as the adhesive, and man, did that change everything. Suddenly, I was creating fingerboards like crazy, using Elmer's liquid glue to put together countless layers of index cards, making the tails higher or lower than the regular boards, finding sandpaper in the garage and using that as grip tape. There were so many colors of index cards and sandpaper. Combined with my knack for drawing, I'd design and build so many different boards. But everything changed when I started to have a fascination for technology. Don't get me wrong, I was always into tech. I'm pretty sure I learned how to browse the internet and research before I could write legibly. This fascination was taken to a whole new level. I was obsessed with taking things apart to see the components inside of them. Sometimes ripping apart an old phone just to subside my inner curiosity of what laid inside of these plastic shells. I was obsessed with computer chips and the fact that a motherboard was created by a human being. The fact that computers really just read and process in binary zeros and ones. And the fact that through binary, it can communicate. But the part of my brain that was most curious was how a human being that walks this earth, like me, could create something of such complexity. And to this day, I'm still fascinated by those same things. As technology advances, it only continues to surprise me. However, my fascination with creation took a whole different turn when my mom brought home her first video camera. I remember she was excited and put a blank disc inside of it. She started recording me and my brothers hanging out in the living room, singing and dancing to different wrestling theme songs. My mom showed it back to me on the little flip-out screen of what she shot. And there we were, singing, dancing, having a grand old time in our living room. And something just switched in my brain. An absolute fascination in my head unlike anything that has ever happened before. How did someone invent a piece of technology, a computer that communicates through ones and zeros, and gave it the complexity to take something as foreign as a mirror and lens, capturing moving images, and formulate it into data that can then be stored on a disk? And the disc has the ability of being put into a player so you could see this moment back again, over and over. How did someone invent a video camera? I still wonder that to this day. I remember piecing it together that the movies I watched at the theater with human beings in it, that's how they got those moments on a big TV screen. I never really thought about how it got there, but now that I was made aware of it, I couldn't help but be entranced. One of my favorite movies as a kid was Elf, and I thought it was cool realizing that someone had to take a camera into New York City to get these shots of Will Ferrell as an elf. It's almost ridiculous when you think about it.
You did it! Congratulations! World's best cup of coffee. Great job, everybody. It's great to meet you. Hi.
But from then on, I always had a fascination with cinematography. And this fascination of the camera started to die down after a little bit. It never truly went away, but my attention was on something different. It was animation. I always thought animation was amazing because through someone's hard work and dedication, they took frames or pictures of characters and spliced them together to make them move. These frames could be digital like in Toy Story, or they could be physical like the movie Chicken Run. And through my research online, I found an animation software called Pivot Animation. Through the manipulation of basic pivot points, you could pose stick figures, and by taking pictures of each frame, the software would compile it into a GIF, bringing your animation to life. At the same time, while I was learning how to animate, my fascination grew with YouTube. I love being connected online and talking to people. So when my older brother Bob showed me YouTube for the first time, I thought it was so cool that all these people all over the world were using cameras to make their own films and putting it online. They could be short or long, it could be informational or silly. It was truly anything. As long as someone thought it up and had a camera, it could be put online and shared with everyone in the world. I started animating and posting them on YouTube, and it pulled me into a community of other pivot animators. This was an interesting feeling as far as creation goes. Every time I created something in the past, it was only shared with myself, but in the case of animating on YouTube, I was sharing it with everyone who happened to click on my video. And it was fascinating that someone could be staring at something I made from their computer screen from anywhere in the world. I still don't know how to describe the magical feeling of creating something and putting it into the cyberspace. It's something that felt so futuristic, something that is so complex and outside of my wheelhouse of understanding. At the time, it was so new and unique that it put me into a constant state of awe. I kept animating and posting more and more online. I made friends and collaborated with other animators, but it wasn't until Christmas of 2008 that my parents got me my first camera. It was a Logitech QuickCam, and it was typically used for video calls, but that didn't stop me from creating video content and putting it online. Instead of uploading animations to my YouTube channel, it ended up turning into crazy skits featuring all of my brothers. My best friend Alex Davis came over after Christmas and started recording multiple different made-up TV shows that centered around our terrible acting and improv skills. But we made multiple different shows and countless episodes, all in 2 or 3 days. I started developing some better editing skills and continued to create skits with my neighbor Ricky on another different YouTube channel. And shortly after this, my mom got me a Crayola digital camera. It was an odd little thing, but my mom got me it because it was in a bargain bin, easy to use, and because I was obsessed with the webcam. She wanted to give me the freedom of being able to record and not be tethered to a computer. So I started up another YouTube channel in 2009, recording countless videos and moments with my family and friends. Sometimes there were short clips of us cutting down our Christmas tree. Sometimes it was tons of time recording us all playing out in the snow, or capturing my brothers at one of their baseball games. It was sometimes just me doing cool tricks on a tech deck or using a homemade board. With this easy to use and untethered camera, I could record and post anything that popped in my head. I had so many different channels at this point that I was posting almost every other day. I started up another YouTube channel based around wrestling matches between me, Alex, and my brothers. We loved pro wrestling, so we kept recording more and more. And none of these channels ever really got views, outside of maybe a few family members, but the numbers never mattered. I was just absolutely entranced that I could create anything and capture a moment in time, and be able to put it up online where it could be housed to be rewatched forever. I made so many different channels that I don't even remember all of them. I started using wrestling action figures and a camera to make stop motion animations after being inspired from other YouTube channels, and I posted these animations on another separate YouTube channel. I kept editing and getting more and more complex with my audio layers, visual effects, and transitions. Eventually, during my last year of middle school, I met someone named Mike, and he was fascinated that I was posting countless videos online. Mike was a huge pro wrestling fan as well, and enjoyed watching the matches we made. So he asked if he could join, and of course I was okay with that. We created many matches, promos, and storylines, and I honed in on my editing skills, eventually rebranding the channel and the wrestling show. We completely overhauled it and transformed it into an actual show, with characters, storylines, a stage, even a ring eventually. I got better at my audio and visual skills, making my own logos and visual art. There was a disagreement between Mike and I, though. He kept wanting to push the envelope more and more, making the show bigger and bigger by putting money into the production and by adding more and more people. There was a clear divide between him and I. I enjoyed the process of creating content and making an entertaining show, not because I wanted it to get bigger and flesh it out into an actual production. Eventually, due to a lot of rifts in our relationship, lies and deceit, and the clear creative differences between him and I, we stopped being friends. In fact, it was so messy that fall of 2012 was the last time I created any sort of YouTube content until 2014. After the falling out and the mess that was the wrestling channel, I started to get really into video games. I got a PC for the first time and started playing games on an actual rig and branched out from console gaming. I started recording some gameplay and posting it online with friends that I was hanging out with at the time. Sometimes if I had an idea about a good video, I'd post it on my first channel, but these videos were few and far between. I would only post maybe about once a year. It wasn't until my wife inspired me to create another YouTube channel in 2017, and that was the year that I fell in love with it again. This time the channel would center around gaming, but very rapidly it ended up being changed from Multi-Kill Gaming to Multi-Kill Studios. Changing it to Studios was supposed to allow me to branch out from gaming because I wanted to create all kinds of things. I went from making Let's Plays to reviewing games, letting Alex do wrestler impressions, vlogging multiple different times in our lives. I made some mini documentaries. It's almost like I tried to keep the channel content as one thing, but very rapidly the joy of creating came back in full force, and I went back into just creating all kinds of different content like I did as a kid. However, some things were a little different. With this channel, I wanted to try and be successful on YouTube, which required growth. So instead of focusing on just making content, I was focusing on what content seemed to perform the best when it came to its views and interaction. I started upgrading my set, upgrading my camera and microphone quality. I'd continue to make content constantly, and I would think creatively on how to make it fun, like getting a green screen and capturing everyone sitting on a couch playing co-op games, or having Kevin slice a controller in half with a sword because he raged too much while we played Cuphead, or recording a competition between my brothers and his friends at an arcade. There were tons of different things going on. However, once 2019 came around, I had decided that in order for the channel to grow faster, I needed to be consistent with my upload schedule. So I started setting strict deadlines for myself. I'd upload every Wednesday for most of that year. The problem that occurred from this was my enjoyment for video games and content creation. I felt like creating content where I had to focus so hard on what I was saying in the moment was taking away my ability to be engrossed into whatever game I was playing. And from the constant upload schedule, it was sapping my ability to fully indulge into my creativity. Sort of like limiting a painter. If you let them stew on it and paint for 2 months, the painting will come out way more detailed or creative than say if you only had 2 days to paint with no time to think about it. The feeling of being creatively restricted to an upload schedule was ultimately why I stopped being consistent on uploading. Instead, I decided to focus on the quality of content. In 2020, I decided to dive all in on Let's Play content because it was what performed the best on the channel, totally ignoring the fact that I wasn't enjoying games to the fullest. I eventually found a groove in what style I enjoy portraying this type of content. Instead of longer, less edited content, I went with a much faster, more heavily edited, funnier style. And I kept with this type of content for a whole year, posting many videos and enjoying the moments being captured every time. But it wasn't until the Clowncore video started to gain traction that another shift in content happened. Back in September of 2019, I created a video talking about the weirdness of clowncore, and I recorded my process of hunting down music similar to them. Eventually, a full year later after that video had been posted, the YouTube algorithm was making this video gain an insane amount of traction due to clowncore releasing a new album. It brought in a huge amount of people to the channel, and ultimately, because of that, I started covering more music-based content. I made a follow-up video shortly after the first one blew up, and that gained more traction as well, bringing in even more people to the channel. I started to realize that sharing more opinionated pieces and talking about my thoughts was gaining more traction than any Let's Play ever did. Plus, I found it to be much more fun and fulfilling. So I released one video playing Elf Bowling with my brother simply because it was something I really wanted to capture. And I tried my hand at talking about the state of racing games and ultimately why I was pumped for an indie game called Night Runners to eventually be released. And that video sort of laid the groundwork for what was going to be in store for next year. 2021 changed everything. Due to COVID, I was laid off from my day job, and I was in a lucky financial situation with my wife that ultimately I could stay home and do YouTube full time. This allowed me to put all of my energy into YouTube, and the result was my magnum opus at the time. It was a full-fledged review of Cyberpunk 2077. Up until this point, it was the most amount of planning, scripting, storyboarding, editing, and time I ever put into a video. And it seemed like all of my family and friends who supported me from the beginning agreed. They were amazed that I could create something that was so fleshed out and professional looking, and honestly, I was quite amazed with myself as well. It's one of my favorite videos of all time because it really showed just how amazing a video could be when I put my all into it. I proceeded to make a few more videos in the same format, enjoying the process of seeing it come together from an idea into a full-fledged piece of entertainment. However, regardless of my joy, there was this nagging feeling in the back of my head that my channel growth was becoming stagnant, and the fact that 75% of my followers have subscribed to me for the music content. So I started making some more follow-ups to the first 2 Clowncore videos. I made 2 more videos talking about weird music, but I wasn't finding too much joy in it by the time I got to the 4th episode. Felt like I was just going on in continuous motions for the views and subs. It was a very similar feeling to when I was holding myself to a weekly upload schedule, like just going through the motions and being engaged in the numbers instead of the content itself. And ultimately, 2021 would end with a video on Monkey Ball Banana Mania, because it was a game that I was super passionate about and I really wanted to talk about it on the channel. 2022, however, is the biggest shift of them all. I made a video talking about a challenge to only play the Switch for an entire year and not buy any new games while on the road. It's interesting how I thought I was unhappy from the temptation of buying games, but I actually think a big reason for this was the pressure to create content. I ultimately found a style of video that works for me, that is writing things out and creating a video around that audio. But I ultimately put the channel on the back burner to finish up the van build and live on the road. And, well, I haven't posted anything since. Why is that? I have all the time and creative freedom in the world to post content, but I haven't done it since. Well, I guess after thinking about it, there's multiple reasons. My fascination with YouTube and creating content started with a general fascination with the camera and the ability to share things over the internet. As the years went on, it turned into a hyper-focus of building a following to be successful. That and keeping up with YouTube's algorithms and figuring out what is trending just sucked out the fun and creativity of what brought me to YouTube in the first place. Also, because I put all of my energy into YouTube and created some amazing stuff, there was a whole other pressure of needing it to be perfect. Instead of posting anything I wanted, I was held back by the constant need to do my best and put out the next thing that will bring growth to the channel. Both of these factors ultimately made it hard for me to post. Before I could even finish a specific topic or video, fear of it not working out and satisfying my following or the algorithms would make me scrap it and move on to something different. Because of this, I scrapped over 20 different scripts that could have been entertaining or creatively fulfilling. But I didn't, simply because it wouldn't be good enough for my quality of content, or it wouldn't be on topic enough for most of my followers now. There was so much pressure to appease the numbers, followers, and image of my brand that ultimately taking a break from it and thinking to myself about what I wanted while living on the road ultimately made me decide to stop making YouTube as my main aspirations in life. I missed creating just for the general joy of creation, before things got muddy and confusing with a following. I missed being able to just post something on YouTube simply because I wanted to. I realized very rapidly that in order to go back to just enjoying the process again, I had to remove the financial pressures from YouTube. I had to figure out a separate avenue in life for me to pursue when it comes to providing some financial backing in my life. If it wasn't YouTube, then what could it be? I realized I missed working with my hands. I missed the general feeling of amazement when opening up a device and seeing what components were inside. And that's why the idea of starting up a business refurbishing and modding game consoles popped in my head. I love technology. I love giving things a new home or giving a device new life. The world goes through so much junk and these systems end up rotting in landfills or collecting dust in someone's basement. I've always enjoyed the process of providing games for people and their enjoyment. This whole idea just seemed like a perfect fit. Because this avenue would provide the financial income, that would let YouTube continue to be something that I could just create and do whatever I wanted with. It almost felt freeing. It's funny, it's like as soon as I determined this change in my life, I started looking at a lot of these scripts and thought, yeah, maybe I will do something with this. It's like this prison I kept myself locked in for so many years has finally been opened and I can just willingly create content for my own enjoyment again. I want to get back into creating Let's Play content for the heck of it. I want to do more opinionated stuff because I enjoy the process and seeing it come together. I started a new vlog channel that is documenting all of my and Selena's traveling, and I have been able to willingly work on this constantly because I no longer have the pressures of the main channel being held over my thoughts. I'm so excited to start up a refurbishing/modding business to work with my hands again. I'm excited to give back to a community that I've been passionately following for so long, and I'm so excited to create again for YouTube, to be fully engrossed into all sides of my inner creativity again. I've been recording some music, drawing constantly again, writing almost every single day, editing vlogs, and ultimately enjoying my everyday just traveling and experiencing new adventures with my wife. Ultimately, walking away from the success of YouTube has been the greatest decision I've ever made. That is, unless you count living in a van and traveling the world. There are so many ideas I can't wait to share. I have a lot in the works and coming. I just have to not hold myself back and ultimately do it for the joy of creation.